Hi and welcome to another edition of the People First interview series, where we shine a light on great companies. Not only do they do interesting and cool things, but most importantly, they look after their people. Identifi Global is a market leader in personalised career management and talent acquisition, specialising in the legal technology and legal services marketplace, with great candidate experience guaranteed. I'm excited today to be joined by Janet Taylor-Hall, founder and CEO of Cognia Law. I've been looking forward to this one for a little while. Cognia Law is an independent international law company that delivers advisory, flexible resourcing and managed services to law firms, banks and corporates. Their services cover client needs from crises and projects, BAU and flow management and future fit advisory. Cognia Law is ranked as a brand one contract lifecycle management alternative legal service provider in the Global Chamber rankings and was one of the proud winners of the FT Innovative Lawyer Awards in 2019 for innovation and collaboration. Hi Janet, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Hopefully I've covered everything there. That's accolades for sure. I've talked a lot about Cognia, but what people really care about is you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How do you go from, being a student in South Africa to being the founder of Cognia Law? Give us a brief overview of who you are.
Well, it's been quite a journey. I started my career at EY, where I was a management consultant. Learned my trade, drawing process flow maps, and then moved on to managing and setting up large shared service centres. Okay. I did start my career in South Africa, but then moved across to Europe. Was based in Brussels for a period of time, and then in London. I then decided it was time to get a real job, so I was going to go and work for a bank. By hook or by crook, it's a long story. I ended up working for Clifford Chance, a law firm, which is was a great 10-year journey through a very interesting time. Starting in early 2001 with a really great firm, initially sort of tackling sort of global, bringing things together globally on the business services side, but then moving on to really looking at how legal work is done and how one optimizes that. Had a great consulting team there. Then, once again, I kind of had this moment of, all right, time to move on. Time to move back into banking, maybe go in-house. Okay. And then I was attracted really to joining a legal process outsourcer. It was an organization that I really resonated with. They'd been a client of ours, done some great work in helping us set things up, and also we'd kind of been with them in terms of part of the journey. Operational founder, joined them. Had a very interesting experience off the back of that. 6 months after joining, the CEO was essentially booted out by the private equity investors. It's an interesting journey, but I learned quite a lot about culture and how cultures can change and kind of what worked for me. I then had the interesting experience of having lived in London permanently, for 13 years, having my other half say to me, I'm ready to move. I want to leave the UK. So we had a bit of an esoteric discussion about where in the world we would place our home, because we always see it as virtual. By hook or by crook, we ended up basing ourselves between London and South Africa and Cape Town. And then I took a sabbatical. I was going to join the BPO sector here, and then got inspired both by my former boss, who'd been the founder of the previous organization that I worked for, but also simply by seeing a gap in the market and saying, really, there's something different that is required in law. There's a growing need. Took the plunge and founded Cognia. It's interesting because you asked the reference back to the student days, really, one of the probably the most informative thing that happened to me as a student, what I learned most from is actually the University of Cape Town, where I was a student, has a non-profit organization that is part student-owned, student-run, and run by a director. I have the great benefit or privilege of being one of the student vice presidents in my final year at university. And frankly, just had that amazing feeling of waking up in the morning, feeling like you have something important to do. It's an amazing organization, educates. It also outreach. It's got a medical side of things. It's got development centers. Fantastic organization called Chalco. frankly found myself back here, having founded a company, and suddenly finding myself in a situation where I wake up in the morning, I feel like I've got something important to do again. So it's really been a full cycle.
I think yeah, I mean that's really important, because not everybody takes that opportunity to get out there and do something, and I know you undersell yourself quite a lot, because you missed out the fact that you were nominated for an entrepreneurship award for women in legal tech. What's the state of play with that?
I think the awards are next week sometime, so that's still in play.
Well, congratulations, and good luck with that. So
thank you.
So this is the People First podcast series, and this was born out of people looking after, or organisations looking after their people, not just during a pandemic, but in general. And I think the pandemic has hidden a lot of sins and is also shone a light on some really great organisations. So could you describe to me what things were like for you and Cognia Law during lockdown initially, and what emotions did you go through and your team go through, and how did you communicate during that time?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time, and sort of ironically, we find ourselves in a round two at the moment of the whole lockdown experience, or certainly for part of our team. I think it was a real shock to the system, in the sense that in one way I was so proud of the team in terms of how they just literally, we made a decision, okay, before lockdown globally, but it's time to go virtual for everybody's well-being and for business continuity purposes. We can work virtually. Had permission from our clients, which was great, a great trust-based relationship there, and moved everyone. And it was just remarkable how overnight everyone pulled together. They transitioned, they carried on doing the job, and it was really amazing. But it was a real shock to the system for everybody. So I always talk about the Corona roller coaster. You had days of just amazing moments where, wow, it's all working, and those sort of deep moments of exhaustion, sense of loss, etc. So I think for the team went through that cycle, and we went through that cycle as well. And I mean, we moved into hyper care mode for the team. I mean, it was just it was a care for clients and a care for teams, and just making sure that the team was all right. And I think from a management perspective and our leadership team, I mean, we literally we allocated the entire organization between us, and we checked in every week with individuals, and sort of brought this kind of hypercare mode to it. And while that was amazing, because there's actually nothing more rewarding than having a one-on-one conversation with a team member. It just kind of, I don't know, particularly when you don't spend every day talking to team members in the organization. It also puts a huge load, both emotionally and otherwise, onto the team, or onto a leadership team, where focused on, our big focus was, we wanted to, in the initial period, keep everyone employed regardless of what happened, just to keep that sort of stability while the world adjusted to this kind of, I hate the word new normal, but essentially, whatever it was going to become. Due to the nature of the pandemic, we knew it would lead to an economic crisis, which is quite, typically, not that I'd ever wish for it, but quite good for businesses like ours. So it was just keeping that period. So I would say it's a real mix of highs and lows. In terms of that, for me personally, the massive adjustment came from the fact that I'm one of those people that gets energy from other people. I just love, going to a meeting, meet with an individual, and you get that exchange of energy when you meet people in person. It's taken me a long time to kind of adjust to the fact that everything is now done in the medium in which we now do it, and it's very, very hard. Occasionally you get those moments where you have those conversations that just spark you, but generally speaking, I mean, it doesn't matter how hard you try, and it's no issue with the person on the other end. It's just very, very hard to replicate. And I think for me, that was I miss the people, I miss the buzz, I miss the.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's interesting because your people are located in different countries. So has there been any cultural differences from a management perspective and a COVID perspective? I'm interested in, you know, how it affects people in different countries. Is it the same? Is everyone experiencing the same things? Is there cultural differences? Do you have to manage people differently, or is it pretty much the same?
I think it's on a human level, you know, it's the same. They're human beings, and you know, I think there's that sense of caring and, you know, conversation and that sort of thing. So I would say, you know, from a global perspective, I mean, we do tend to hire, attract, retain individuals that sort of fit into. We have quite a distinct culture. We've got a very clear purpose, and you know, we've got individuals that sort of resonate with that. So there haven't been massive differences in terms of how we've needed to manage people. However, the different locations have been at different points in the cycle. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we've got a team in the UK, we've got a team in Europe, we've got a team in South Africa. You know, that's different seasons, different levels of lockdown that have been, you know, so literally we had basically sunshine makes a huge difference, right? So it was a lot easier for our UK-based team while the sun was shining and there was a good summer. We're now in the reverse situation where our UK-based team and our European team are all in lockdown as the weather is getting worse and worse and worse. And then our South African team are a bit out of lockdown, and they not completely. I mean, there's still quite a bit of restriction, but the sun is shining. And, you know, so I think there's that, you know, where people are in the cycle, and just being cognizant and really respectful of the fact that people are at a different place. We've of course got clients all over the world, so you know, the differences are fascinating. You know, you talk to a client in Australia, kind of where they're at. You talk to another one in, you know, you talk to another one in the US. You talk to another one in Canada. You know, you kind of have this. It's fascinating. So yeah. I think the approach we've taken is much more of a treat individuals as individuals, and you know, just recognize and be respectful of the fact that people are in really different places.
On that note, I mean, given your client base is diverse in different countries, has it presented obstacles or opportunity for you, or a mixture of both? I mean, what benefits have you taken from it?
I mean, one of the challenges, I guess, and let's start with the challenges, have come from the fact that, you know, our sector is a very trust-based, relationship-based, relationship management, account management, business development type environment. So that's been quite an adjustment. Where, you know, for large clients, where, you know, typically, or most clients, you know, kind of see each other once a month in a relationship, you know, basis. So I think that's been quite an adjustment. I think we and our clients have kind of adjusted quite well to that. And you know, as the world is building new relationships has been quite challenging. So, you know, I think that's where the challenges lie. I think the opportunity has sat in the fact that, I mean, our model is, even if we've got some individuals who are based in an office, is a virtual model. So our teams work as virtual direct extensions of our clients in most cases. Yeah. And what has been really, really beneficial and a great opportunity is suddenly our clients have been in the same boat. So actually, you know, rather than them sitting in an office remoting another team that they felt was virtual, they've now all been in a virtual bubble everywhere. They've all been at home everywhere. And somehow that's built a different camaraderie. It's built a different acceptance of virtual. It's built the faith that virtual actually works. So, you know, I think that's where the massive opportunity has come from, is the fact that, you know, I think we've all realized through this whole process that actually this can, you know, you can do anything from anywhere in the world. And actually, you know, really what it's about is about the people and about the relationships and about being comfortable that in fact the virtual infrastructure that sits around this service that you're receiving is, you know, world class. It has all the compliance standards you need. It's something you can trust, but essentially you can access it anywhere. So that's been a very exciting part of the opportunity.
Wow, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. You know, all of a sudden you've become a part of their culture by proxy, really, because previously you would have to go there to build up that relationship, whereas now you're able to do it remotely. I know from our previous conversations that, that sort of purpose-driven culture that you talked about, is really high on your agenda, something I could talk to you for hours about. So perhaps you could give some people some explanation of, I guess, why is that important to you, and how have you achieved this, and perhaps some of the trials and tribulations of getting to this point?
Yeah, so I think essentially, we've had a strong sense of purpose right from founding, and really that's about really being driven by the fact that things can be done differently. Organizations, individuals can work in organizations, they can be valued, you can have a solid culture, you can have a healthy work ethic, and still provide world-class services without being siloed, political, dysfunctional in your work practices, etc., etc. So, Cognia has really been drawn out of the purpose is really around having a diverse team of individuals and having the communities in which we operate thrive. So it's a real movement from, survive to thrive, and actually putting in place a platform to enable that. And we've been very driven by having human dignity at the heart of what we do. I think the other thing is that it's been driven by the fact that, we fundamentally believe that there is a different way of delivering legal services, and a better way of delivering legal services. And that has driven us. And really what we seek to do is be an example of what the future world of law looks like, and provides examples and in everything we do. But we're very driven by operating in an ecosystem. It's not all about us. It's about how we leverage the best of law and actually provide solutions to our clients. So there's that changing the world of law, but there's also this changing the world of work as well, sort of purpose piece to it. And I think, look, to some extent, it's not the easiest road to tread. It's not the fastest way to a big huge payout and a sellout. But that's not really what we were after. I mean, what we really were after was to build something that made a difference. And I think what's made a big difference for us is that purpose and that sense of purpose has been there from the beginning. And it resonates with team members. It resonates with clients. They recognize it. And I think, in that sense, continuously striving, the whole collaboration piece and cooperation piece with other providers. I mean, we work effectively with competitors. We work effectively with law firms. We work effectively with tech providers and clients in building ecosystems. And we work hard at that. And I think there's that element of authenticity around what it is we're about. And what that tends to manifest itself into is that, for some people, they buy into it and they love it, and they thrive in that environment, and they thrive in that culture, and they bought into it. For other people, it isn't their thing, and it becomes quite easy for both us and them in terms of saying, look, there's nothing bad about you, nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with us. But at the end of the day, there isn't
a match. Yeah.
It just isn't a match.
Yeah.
And I think that has really borne the sort of secrets of success. And to be honest, it's true of clients as well. You don't always have a match in terms of clients from an ethos perspective, a mindset perspective, and yet others, if you take a purpose-led approach to everything you do, we've found that if organizations connect in terms of their purpose, then actually the rest of it becomes quite easy, because they've got that more foundational relationship in place, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to our business. We started our business purely on the candidate experience and providing excellent candidate experience. And I know it seems obvious thing to say, isn't it? Because it's easy to say, yeah, we're a great company and we really look after our people, but actually being able to pin something on it and actually demonstrate it is something else altogether in any industry, I believe. And ultimately, what people want from us as a recruiter is they want good candidates that are engaged, and they want them to have a great experience. And if we're the first touch point of that service, and that breaks down, then that reflects badly on the business. So, and you're absolutely right. We experienced very similar things where organizations say, yeah, we get it, we love it, it's exactly what we want from our supplier. And then that's when the magic happens, isn't it? Everything, like you say, everything else just sort of goes, works out really well. But if you spend all of your time overselling or, trying to be something that you're not, then you end up tripping yourself up along the way. So I think that's really, really poignant piece.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? I mean, I quite often get asked, well, what's your ideal client? And I think in this scenario for you, what's your ideal client? Well, it's somebody that values the hiring process as much as they value the account management process. They see the people they hire as important as the clients, the customers they have. Exactly. And then that's a whole mindset essentially.
So we've talked about the leadership style, and you moving to being remote almost entirely. Have you had to deliver that differently as any of your leaders had to adopt their way of doing things, or has it been a pretty straightforward switch, or have you had to do anything with your leaders to help them manage in a remote environment?
Yeah, I think it's been an adjustment for everybody, and I think what we've done as a leadership team is we've just talked about it all the way through. We've shared our experiences, we've shared our challenges, shared our struggles, thrown ideas around. In some instances we've got help where we at the moment really working towards, we see ourselves in the future being what we call a hybrid organization. We've always had an element of the organization virtual. We anticipate going forward beyond this, more of it will be virtual than otherwise. And even the stuff that is based in offices will, people will come and go. They might not work from the office every day. So that is a different, and that's a hybrid environment. It's not a virtual environment, and it's not a dedicated environment. It's a combination of the two, and it's sort of moving things in those directions. So, I think from that perspective, we've really sort of walked the journey in terms of just being very, very honest about, yes, it's hard. Are we doing this right? Are we not? What other things do we need to think about? And things like how do you effectively engage with the whole team in a manner that you kind of get in these briefing sessions. You kind of do this every 2 weeks. You've got this all team update. You kind of sit on the other end, and you've got all these very seldom faces. Nobody asks any questions. Yeah. I mean, it's understandable, right? And hang on, that model doesn't work. And so, we've kind of gone, okay, well, there's a smarter way of doing that. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we've just done a town hall update where we had some talking, in terms of strategy and that kind of thing, and direction, all that kind of thing. And then we used breakout rooms, and we got people to brainstorm, well, what are the ideal behaviors and characteristics of a thriving individual within this organization? And it's just those different ways of engaging people. And, suddenly it went from actually being a kind of, these updates that you used to give, it's like, oh, I hope it's motivating everyone. You message somebody afterwards, well, was that okay? Yeah, it was fantastic. It's like, oh, well, that's great. Well, I just felt like I was talking to a screen, to a sense where you can actually feel the engagement, because the breakout groups come back and they feed back, and it's just, so you learn all the time, essentially. And I think that's the really important thing, is the learning piece of it. We're all on a journey. You're not going to get 100% right. We're all on a journey.
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned is when you're on those long, arduous, updates, or, even meetings in general, is you can hit the mute button and do a big sigh and then turn the mute button back off again. So,
and turn off the camera and have a good stretch, and then
exactly. So, one thing, with that in mind, do you think that we need different leaders sort of post-pandemic? What does the future leader look like, in your opinion?
I just think, I'm not sure we need different leaders. I just think their behaviors and characteristics and sort of strengths and things that people will need to focus on. That, I mean, a big one is on self-management and looking after yourself and self-care, essentially. I think if the pandemic has taught leaders anything, it's been the fact that, if you don't take care of yourself, and not in a selfish fashion, I'm talking about taking care of your own mental health, your energy levels, your all of that sort of thing, and I mean, that's easier said than done. I mean, I'm sure we'll kind of get onto it. I mean, if you ask me what's keeping me awake at night, I'll tell you it's the mental health of our team and frankly the mental health of the globe. But that's a whole nother story. But I think from that perspective. So, I think leaders are. And then the second thing is that the other thing that has really been important is if people talk about authentic leadership, or what is authentic leadership, and it's about just being willing to actually just be honest about kind of where you are personally, still be strong and still motivate, etc., but not pretend that everything's all right, because then what you do is you create this supposed archetype, which is just which is impossible for people to connect with because they are struggling. So I think there's an element of that in terms of the self-management and the sort of authenticity perspective, which, I mean, to be honest, I think is probably relevant in any context. The other challenging thing is, of course, even with hybrid models in the future, it's becoming so much more aware and equipped as to, when you're working with people, as to how to identify signs of people struggling, of pending burnout, of people having difficulties when in fact you're actually not face to face with somebody, because you physically meet somebody, and even if they put on a good show, you pick up the vibe, you pick up the energy, and something triggers you to it. Quite hard to do on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's quite hard to do on a Zoom call, and it's almost and I think that's something that we're now focusing a lot on, is to say, well, how do we better equip both our team members and our managers and leaders to actually identify these signs in one another and in themselves before they get to a point where they actually are burnt out, and then suddenly it's like, well, I didn't see this coming, kind of thing, which is often so. I think there's that element of skill set there that is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that identifying, I think there's many facets to that, because there's when hiring people, you want the best of the best, don't you? And often you overlook the human element. You look at what they can do rather than who they are. So you say, right, I need that doing, and you're really good at doing that, so come in and do that. And then when things go wrong, or the business changes shape or direction, and that person that person's role or skill gets diluted a little bit because they're now doing something else, people forget that when you change to do something, or you're in a pandemic, or you're in a crisis, or whatever it looks like, it doesn't always have to be negative. It can just be doing a new role to help take the business in a new direction. That person becomes stressed or overloaded, or feels insecure because they don't feel they can do the role that well. That's when that pressure starts to build, from a mental health, notwithstanding obviously personal situations as well, but just doing the role, someone's a change in someone's role. Now, there are people out there that absolutely love change, and there are people that just like to come in and do one thing and do it really, really well. So and people forget that, and actually they don't assess that when hiring people. And it's hard to cover off all aspects of mental health in an interview, I agree, but there are things like personality profiling that help you look at an individual objectively and say, oh, actually this person is, we're all of a sudden we've had to move to remote. This person is quite gregarious. They like to be around people, much like you said yourself, get energy off that. So do you know what? I'm going to check in on that individual and just make sure they're okay. There's that level of insight that organizations can rely on to help them manage these people. But, that said, being aware of mental health, or just signposting it in general across the leadership team, more training in those areas, I think is really important, just to make them cognizant of actually checking in and actually being aware of what to look for.
Yeah.
To look for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you raise that on personality profiling. I think there's a place for it in certain circumstances, but I think you've got to be a little careful of it sometimes as well, because I mean, we found that some of our extroverts that have struggled even more than introverts that have struggled even more than the extroverts in terms of it. But I think that I think if you keep human dignity at the heart of everything you do, and you look at people as individuals, each individual as an individual, and you're cognizant of that, and you you recognize that, and you create a safe place for people to actually just be human and be themselves, and not always have to pitch up with the makeup done and the hair done and everything's okay. Then I think that's really where, and it's more important than it's ever been before in these circumstances, because it's just, you've just got to let people and take people for what they are at that moment in time, and just always recognize the fact that they're human. And sort of, it's always very easy to say, well, if somebody drops a ball, almost take the approach of saying, well, hang on, before you get really furious about this person dropping the ball and kind of write them off, just maybe try and understand a little bit why, because there could be, and there's often environmental cases there that impact it. So it's about that, looking at individuals as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've sort of talked about it there a little bit, but if you could maybe put a fine point on what does good leadership mean to your organization, and if you could, do you have a methodology that you approach, or is it very much as focusing on the individual as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, really what we seek to do, and are pushing this forward even further now, is really taking a mentoring approach to leadership, and encouraging our leaders and developing our leaders in that skill, essentially, in terms of you mentor and you coach, as it intrinsically brings in the skill set of kind of focusing in on the individual and supporting the individual through making their own decisions and progressing themselves, because in these virtual work environments, I talked about self-management, but I mean they really are outcome based. They're outcome based, and yes, you can work in a team, but at the end of the day, your ability to manage yourself and make decisions and push things forward and keep yourself motivated. You can have the best support structure and ecosystem, but it's learning and training that muscle that is really important. So that's really what we look for in leaders, and we equip leaders through, and we help them in a number of ways in terms of just mentoring skills and that kind of thing, but also recognizing we have a very strong CSR program, and part of our CSR program is actually mentoring individuals and mentoring young people that are part of that, part of those organizations that we support, or part of those programs they support. So it's actually building up those skills. Another big part of it is there is no blueprint of a leader. We recognize the fact that you need to be authentic, and you need to find your style of leadership, essentially. It's a very personal thing, but essentially, if you're able to be authentic, then you will be a better leader, or a stronger leader from that perspective, in terms of sort of setting example, et cetera. So and there's leading through example, both through being willing to go the extra mile, working hard, and all those things you kind of expect in terms of example, but also the elements of simply being a caring individual and genuinely caring about the people that you work with. So I think that's some of the kind of the nuances around it.
But moving on to the sort of future then, for your business. I mean, have you introduced any new services or products, as a result of this? Has anything changed, or is it you just literally flip the switch to being remote?
I mean, I think our model is built to be virtual. So I mean, essentially, in a sense, there hasn't been a change in the context of the model, because it's built to be virtual. So even though the individuals in it are now virtual for a period of time, the model's built to be virtual. So I think from that perspective, it sort of had that kind of future fit aspect to it. I mean, although I mean, an area that we have started doing quite a bit more work in is, I mean, we have an advisory practice, or a consulting practice, and from that side, you know, we've historically done a lot of work in sort of operating model design, process efficiency, you know, all of that kind of thing. You know, helping organizations work through, well, what is the strategy for their legal function, you know, et cetera, et cetera. What we now have started introducing and recognizing is the fact that actually you sometimes need to take that whole conversation one step back and sort of say, okay, let's actually look at the whole systemic aspect of this setup and this organization. You know, what is the purpose? What is the vision of this team? You know, where does it sit? You know, is it a sort of compliance-based culture? You know, what are they looking to do? You know, et cetera, and work much more on that sort of it's almost the softer side of it, which then and systemic side of it, which then connects in with what's the operating model, you know, what the efficiencies, what do the teams actually do, what are the tasks, et cetera. So there's certainly been an element of that. I mean, you know, we find that now more than ever, clients need help solving problems. So, you know, what they're needing now is they're needing solutions. They're not just needing a piece of the puzzle, they're needing the whole puzzle. So, you know, we've always had this mindset, but we're finding it's even more important than ever now, is that you sit down with a client, you understand the problem, and you actually help them put the solution in place. And you might find that some parts of that solution are not all you in terms of what your organization may do. But then, you know, your ability to help them to put an ecosystem together that, and you don't make that integration of that ecosystem their problem. You actually help them with it. And you know, we're seeing more and more acceptance and interest in those kind of models coming through, and demand for it. It's more important than ever.
Fantastic. So sweeping from pandemic to Brexit, last couple of questions, I promise, and I told you I could talk to you for hours. So how do you see Brexit affecting the legal services market or industry, if at all? I mean, are you gearing for any changes? What can you see happening?
Well, I mean, I think regardless of what your views are on Brexit, and we won't sort of go into a political dark hole on that one. No. I mean, the reality is that you know, Brexit on top of pandemic will continue to have an economic impact, even if your view is that the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain. Which, but point being is the fact that, you know, I think that what is really impacting the legal sector now is the fact that, you know, the legal sector it's had its ups and downs, and it had its, you know, it was impacted post the financial crisis and etc. But, you know, it's like everything, it's in pain. You know, I mean, business generally is systemically in pain. So, you know, you've got in-house legal functions who are having to downsize. And, you know, everyone talks about do more with less, do more, you know, do more with less, do more. I mean, it's never been more real than it is now. So I think the impact will be, it's just upping the heat. It's just upping the pressure. It's just upping the challenge that the legal sector has. And, you know, I personally believe, and maybe I'm an eternal optimist, that the legal sector will emerge better for this. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot that's gone on over the last period. You know, more focus on mental health. You know, more focus on D&I. You know, more healthier models, virtual models. Being brave enough to step out and say, look, I'm really going to try something different here, because if I don't, I can't save the amount of money that my CEO or the FD is demanding that I save. Yeah. You know, similarly with law firms. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you know, a lot of them have had utilization challenges over this whole period, and has made them realize that actually they need a more flexible workforce. And it's only, you know, like, we're all human, right? Like the classic, the child's got to burn their finger on the radiator before they actually will realize they shouldn't touch the radiator. And, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's a kind of learning from experience thing. So I think it's going to be very good. Like longer term, it'll be good for the sector. It's going to drive a lot of change through that. it's also because there's opportunity. You've got players moving into the market like the Big Four and various others who it just brings a whole new dynamic into the market. So
yeah,
quite exciting times, really.
Yeah, well, I think you take that view, don't you? I see it as an opportunity or as a restriction. So yeah, good luck to you in that sense. And then my final question, which I ask everybody at the end of the podcast, is what's the biggest learning and piece of advice for other leaders? So your peers in this sector. How have you, in terms of navigating this period and post pandemic and also Brexit?
Biggest learning. Oh, there've been so many, right? Biggest learning. I guess it's being about ensuring that you look. It's the looking after yourself thing.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I mean, intrinsically, if you have a caring culture, you're a caring person, in order to do that, in order to be regenerative, you need to be regenerated yourself. You need to recharge your batteries. You need to have habits that enable you to sleep. You need to take breaks. You need to, and I think that's really the key thing, is that if you're going to, I guess it's our equivalence, our generation's equivalent of living through a kind of war, essentially, in terms of realizing that, in fact, actually, you can keep charging the front and keep charging the front and keep charging the front. But at the end of the day, if you don't actually step back and just, breathe and think and take a break, because look, taking a break's hard when you can't actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
Particularly, when you're in lockdown. I mean, you can't actually go anywhere, so you don't take a break. And I think what I've learned over the period is that actually it's those times where I've gone, actually, you know what? I actually have to take a break. I've got to step away from this. I've got to take time. I've got to recharge my batteries. I've got to do, whether it's your mindfulness practices or whatever your thing is at the end of the day. And I think from my perspective, it's that, to be strong and to be a strong leader and an inspiring leader, you need to recharge your batteries, essentially.
That is a great way to finish. So thank you for that.
Thank you.